So one of the major challenges, I think, of the current coronavirus in terms of making sense of it ourselves is, if we think back to the conversation we had earlier, and this idea of an image of being able to make sense of a far broader concept, uh, we really struggle to find a single image that can encapsulate such a sort of global experience. It's one of the challenges that they have really motivating people around climate change, is that it's sort of so all encompassing, it's so sort of everywhere, that like finding an individual image is really challenging. And I wonder whether that is one of the things that kind of leads to more of a psychological challenge around the current situation that we're in. So I just wondered, like, Lewis, if you thought about like
I'm really struck that, because, and I'm glad you equated to climate change, because they're both global problems, and they are, as far as we know, they're the first global problems that mankind together has ever had to genuinely experience. And the thing with the coronavirus is it's immediate. People are sick, people are dying. Climate change, there's still this, well, is it, isn't it? It's not that immediate, maybe the weather, but because the immediacy of this, and one of the things that's really struck me has been that there could be not just, like, as you say, a single journalistic image, but I think there is a larger, deeper image, which is that of a butterfly and the metamorphosis. It could be that we're actually going through something of a global metamorphosis at a collective level.
And we're
the
still
first
in the cocoon, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. What the first thing that happens with a caterpillar, it's contained, right? It's contained by a shell of its own making. And the second phase, and I've actually captured the sequence in a series of pictures here. I've had these on my wall for about a year or so now, so I almost feel like maybe there was a visionary aspect to this. And I've done a talk with this, which I'll point you to as well, which is, the first stage is the caterpillar enters this cocoon, and it turns to goo. It turns to soup. Now that goo is, in a sense, it's where it's showing us where all the old systems need to be broken down. Everything needs to be broken down, and then these things called imaginal cells get activated. Now the imaginal cells were always in the caterpillar, but in that old structure, there's no room for them to create or grow. So there's an imaginal cell for a wing. There's an imaginal cell for eyes. So new ways of being, new ways of seeing are all contained in this old structure. It gets turned to soup. In fact, it's almost like a virus, actually, because the soup attacks the imaginal cells because they don't understand what they are. And then what happens is the imaginal cells reorganize all of those proteins into whole new shapes until that old structure that it's contained in has to break completely open. And then this incredible, shining, resplendent new way of being emerges in the form of a butterfly. And, there's something so incredible and potent, and since time immemorial, butterflies have represented transformation to us. And unless we do things like Nick says, which is, really considering, what's happening around us and within us, and considering what's happening with our families right in front of our faces, and also taking that time to play that forward into a new vision of the future of how, that we've got these images inside us already. But deep down, we know we want to be spending more time with our families, right? We want to be getting off the flywheel of just making money for money's sake and filling that hole inside us with material stuff, when good old purpose and meaning fills that space for free, right? And you don't feel the need to have this other things cluttering.
And Nick, do you have an example of a film? Because you gave us a great one earlier about capture your emotion now. What about this sort of better place, this vision, this future? Do you have an example in your archive?
Well, I mean, I think, it doesn't, the future or the vision doesn't necessarily have to be incredibly highfalutin. And sometimes the most effective ones, and the thing that really springs to mind for me is the Dove skincare, where they got an artist, and the artist couldn't see them, but they got them to describe themselves, and then the artist drew it from their description. and it made them look so awful, like they look awful, and it's like, you don't look like that, but because they've been so conditioned that, oh, I've got a big nose, and I've got like really wonky ears, and and then when you see these women, and it's just like, you're beautiful, and like that's this image that this is the way you see yourself, and so like, and this idea of like, of being pure, and just wanting women to feel confident in the way that they look. I mean, I think you can quite often be quite cynical about businesses being, the motives behind them taking stances like this. But I think, as we move into the future, the millennial generation already control about $2.7 trillion in spending ability in the US. And over the next 10 years, we're going to see about 30 trillion in cash being handed over from their baby boomer parents to them. So they are becoming incredibly financially powerful. I say that those numbers were pre 2 weeks ago, so they may have been fairly significantly reduced. Right, but the idea is that they care about the world they live in. They've grown up in a world where there is plastification of the oceans, there is growing inequality, where there is climate change, and and all of the other challenges that make the current lives that we live, even pre-corona, so concerning. And they want to do something about it, and they vote with their feet, and they spend money on products that are seen to have a bit of that are seen to have a purpose motive behind them. And so, yeah, like, in answer to your question, like, it can just be communications that are just like clear around, like, they don't necessarily need to be, oh, this is this amazing, like the way that we build the way that we break through the chrysalis and become the butterfly is not by sort of a kind of crazy shoot the moon goal. It's just by little steps of everyone doing little things. It's people taking food round to the older people who live locally because they don't want to go out shopping. It's 1,000 little steps like that, or 1 million, or even 1 billion little steps like that are what can help us to kind of evolve. And there's been a fair amount of cynicism around, so, oh well, we're just going to go back to the same ways, and I just don't believe that humans can change. Like, we are humanity, right? Like, it's this sort of idea of like, oh well, we have no agency in that. Like, we can make, I mean, and I don't mean to sound kind of ridiculously utopian about it, but like, if we want to change it, if we want to make the world in the way that we want it to be, then we have that ability.
Well, this is, and Nick, I want to come back to Lewis on this, because one of the things you do, Nick, is you do films that do influence, because you work with some of the biggest brands in the world, helping them with their messaging. Lewis, can you get tangible for me again? I'm going to talk visionscaping. In 30 seconds, can you summarize the science of how you do it? How do you do visionscaping?
So it's a 7-step process where you use a guided imagination process to visualize the future with as much clarity as you can muster, and then show you the rules and the tools of how to create and translate that image into a canvas or a piece of paper. Again, no artistic necessary whatsoever. We did it with 300 people with Microsoft, all creating, and I love what Nick said about the little steps, because it's, if you can get a collective group of people all creating the future and see they're part of a bigger picture, then you're all kind of contributing to that one single vision.
So I'm a visionscaper because you trained me how to do that 7-step process. I'm going to tell you a story about tangible value in doing that process. A very good friend of mine, Emma Mitchell, was a magnificent athlete, one of the all-time great women's rugby players. And Emma is now the performance coach with Great Britain Hockey. So she does lifestyle and performance work with the players in the squad. And 2.5 years before the Rio Olympics, she gave me a call and she said, Mark, I've said to Danny Kerry, who's the coach, that he could do with a bit of a bit of you and what you do. And she said, could you ring Danny? Because I've told him you're great. So I rang Danny Kerry, and Danny is a fantastic coach. He's quite a scientific coach and very methodical. So when we started the phone call, and he said, "What if I give you half a day with all of my leaders and management team? What would you do?" And I said, "Oh, it's easy. I'd do some visionscaping." Silence at the other end of the phone. "You do what?" I said, "Well," and I started to describe it, Lewis, as you would. And he said, "Mark, stop." He said, "The more you talk, the less I want to do it." He said, "Just turn up. I'll be there, and I'll be part of the team. Get on with it." So what we did is exactly your visionscaping process. Part of that, I can't remember which step it is, about step 5, is we have to demonstrate how to do it. So we've got loads of paints and pastels and brushes and cloths and stuff. And as you explain how to, you demonstrate it. This is what you do, Lewis. This is what I did. And I grabbed a few things, used my fingers, and I took about a minute to do that. And one of the steps of the process is you ask everyone else, what does that say to you? And one of the guys said, it says a soaring spirit. And I said, that's exactly the emotion I wanted to grab before I now ask you as a leadership team, can you do your visionscapes, please? You've got your canvases, you've got any material you like, go. You've got 30 minutes. And what actually happened was, remember, this is 2.5 years before the Olympics. I think it was a group of 12 leaders. When we revealed each of the canvases, every single one of them had chosen gold as one of the elements of what they grabbed in terms of the pens that they grabbed, or the paint, or the pastel. Everyone had gold in the image. And when we had the discussion, what became evident was no one was talking about that. Everyone was sort of keeping it hush-hush, because the Great Britain team was ranked 5th in the world at the time, and logically completely unrealistic to think about gold medal. And of course, as we know now, gold. And I never had anything else to do with that team whatsoever. It was one session, and then, thanks, Mark, off you go. One visionscaping session, gold medal.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's so great. It's great that it allowed them to vocalize something that they didn't feel entirely comfortable vocalizing. And yeah, I mean, it's incredibly powerful.
And Danny Perry,
really cool.
Coach, just, you don't have to talk about it again. It's there. Yeah. It's who you are. And it's a belief system that's changed from maybe to probably. That's what I felt.
And the fact that someone saw, that soaring spirit says also about their own soaring spirit, that, we see remarkable things in images, especially abstract images, and we tend to play our own story into them. But that was reflective of a happening, of a reality that you generated with them in that moment. It was in them already. It was like one of those imaginal cells, if you like. And they ended up creating a future. It was just sat there, and art's just one form to do that. And just to say, we're also doing some virtual visionscaping with a large engineering company based in Vancouver at the moment, and no real idea how this is going to play out, and I can't say which one, but what they're doing is they're realizing it's a huge company, 10,000 people all over the world, and they're realizing that they've got to seriously readapt all of their core skills, all their abilities, all their talents in a very short period of time, because the world that's emerging, we just don't know what's going to emerge. And I'm amazed that they've included visionscaping as part of their brainstorming practice, to then think, well, how are we going to reorganize our even our resources to be helping in the current crisis? And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to unfold as well.
So as we come to a final comment here, I want to say a couple of things. I'm doing my Graham Norton bit. Nick is at Casual Films, so Nick at casualfilms.com. The New Fire is your book, Nick. What advice would you give anyone listening about how do you create your big why, I think you said last time, in a visual form? What advice or tips would you give?
So I guess one of the challenges that I'm going to do the really annoying thing and go off on an ever so slight tangent and then try my best to bring it back in again. But this is a call to creative. So one of the things I found kind of challenging recently, and I'm not in any way alone with this, is like, it's just how kind of your mental state can change day to day. And I don't I'm extremely lucky that I'm in the position that I'm in, but like, there are times when it feels like, oh, this is fine. And then other times where it's like, this is kind of really weird, and it's actually not fine. We're kind of like, we're missing out on quite a lot of life. One of the things, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they said, there's just so much joy in the world that is being left on the table because of us just sitting at home. And look, we're discovering other ways of experiencing that joy, or a lot of us are, and we're lucky for that. But I guess one of the things that can really help you when you're going through any kind of challenging time, and this, frankly, it runs true for businesses, it runs true for individuals, is to just have a really clear vision as to what you're trying to achieve and where you're trying to get to. What's your ideal 10-year plan? What's the 20-year? I remember reading about this amazing study at Stanford University, where they asked all the people on one of their top business courses what they wanted to achieve over their lifetime. Now, 80% of them had goals, but only 4% of them had written, time-framed goals. So exactly what they wanted to achieve.
Or visualized goals, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they knew exactly what they were trying to achieve. Now, when they caught up with them 25 years later, that 4% controlled 96% of the wealth of the whole group. Now, you might say, well, firstly, is wealth, is that success? I don't know. Maybe it's not. You might also say, well, is the kind of person who is focused enough at college to have written time frame goals, but it does show that like having a clear idea of where you're going can be incredibly powerful for helping you to get there.
And Nick, interestingly, on our last Boostcast, Becky Worley, who you and I both know, Becky was at Stanford University. She's an alumni. On our Boostcast, she said it's a daily thing as well. She said start every day with a clear intention, a clear vision of what you want to achieve. So this isn't just about 10 years. It's about the here and now as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And tying it back in. So just so I can answer your question, the key thing now would be to work out what, review that vision, look at it, how does what we're going through now change it? Maybe how, and then, review it and then revisit it, and just keep revisiting it day after day, week after week.
And one thing you shared, Nick, as well, is share it with family, share it with colleagues, share it, and through the sharing. So that's key. Lewis, what's your advice now in terms of tangible next steps here?
I think one very simple thing you can do in 10 seconds is actually just to take 3 full deep breaths into your body and look at something beautiful, whether it's your child's hand, or whether it's a stone or a rock, or whether it's a piece of art somewhere, and just replay some of those things that you want to be experiencing more of in terms of handling the immediate uncertainty. And then longer term, completely agree with Nick, to actually find a way to dust off that vision and really look at how you can look at new ways of being with your family, with the extended community around you. Those million acts of kindness is what it's all about at the moment. And I think, I'd heartily invite absolutely anyone who's interested to sign up for a soulscaping session at lewisparsons.com, and there's a form on the front. Just send me your email address and you'll get everything you need to join, and we'll create those visions together online together and share them with one another.
Thank you. Lewis is spelled Louis, by the way. And
so true.
One of the things you said right at the start of the last Boostcast, Lewis, was worry is just negative visualization. So I hope what we've inspired is the positive side of this, or the possibility side of visualization, to make a difference to the people listening in and watching. Thank you very much, guys.